Very important what attack speed range you want breakpoints for. What core skills are important on the Necromancer? I mean, technically speaking, all of them. But blood, bones, I mean, they kind of all are. Like Bone Spear, Blood Lance, Blood Surge, Blight, and Sever. And if I'm not mistaken, they all have different frame lengths at a base 1.0 attack speed. And then blood actually reaches the 200% cap fairly easily. But then for the rest of them, they would not typically. Because blood gets Rathma's Chosen. But the other ones obviously don't. So the other ones realistically only get up to 125. They don't even really get past 100 if we're being sincere. But they can get up to 125 with accelerating. Thank you, Boo Boo. Oh, Ava, here's a weird, I mean, it's not a weird question, but just because you're currently right here, if you got a second. Khan, I guess I should also send this off to C Todd, but Khan on Reddit was posting some stuff about attack speed on minions. I like their findings. I don't necessarily agree with the methodology because it's based off of Shadow Blight procs over a given time, which I think inherently comes along with issues of what if you didn't trigger Shadow Blight? Like you're missing anywhere between 1 to 9 total attacks or more. Like your plus or minus becomes like up to like 18 attacks. Ads? Ava's got ads? Hold on. Get out of here. You'll run a build that copied Zool from Heroes of the Storm. I think he's just Bone Necro. Alright, you're back, Ava. Well, you're never gonna have ads ever again. I don't like that. Khan basically posted some attack speed tests in regards to Shadow Mages to look at bonus attack speed. I don't necessarily agree with the methodology because it's looking at Shadow Blight procs over a 2-minute period. And I think that just kind of comes along with a lot of problems. I talked to him about it. I think it's mostly pretty solid. But it mostly, the very interesting thing here is that they were seeing this like non-existent change in breakpoints over a certain percentage. I think it's all in cap 1 of attack speed, but I remember looking at C-Todd stuff, or maybe you shared it with me, and this like general idea that like minions stopped receiving a bonus from attack speed in each cap at a certain percentage, or didn't seem to continue to gain a bonus after a certain point. Mostly, I just want to share this with you. There was a bit of a misunderstanding. He posts that this equation, or I'm sorry, I don't even know if it's a he. They post that this equation cannot support the idea of breakpoints cannot support this like pseudo linear increase and the linear increase down here. I then called him on that. I was like, hey, like I'm very specifically looking like this plateauing is exactly what I would call breakpoints. If you have this consistent plateauing, that's kind of the exact idea of breakpoints. And they walk that back. They're like, oh, no, that's exactly breakpoints right there. It's just that if there's an idea of like consistent breakpoints with plateauing, then this data doesn't support that. I actually generally don't agree with that. Like, depending on what this looked like and what this looked like, this may very well just be an extended point where an increase in percentage has not reduced a frame. It's hard to say. Either way, I wanted to share it with you. It's very good stuff. Seems like he's being very diligent in how they're approaching it. I gave him a lot of kudos because I think it's good to go collect that type of data. But I was wondering if they were like redoing some of the work that like Bacterial has already done, Just Add Sleep, as well as CTOD, so I figured I'd just get it out too. What is my quick and dirty take on the incoming Diablo 4 season? As long as a lot of the feedback that was given positively impacts the changes made to the content, I'm excited for the season. So how is it if there is few to no changes? Is it still decent? If they don't severely change the new content type, then what I believe is we will have less fun Hell Tides and the season will be generally the same, and we'll mostly just be experiencing the changes based off of the balancing. Like, to me, it sounds like minions inheriting attack speed improperly, and the presumption that all of Cap 1 works is what leads to this non-linear increase in attack speed. Yeah. Yeah, no problem, Milo. Is there one primary thing you want Diablo 4 to implement in Season 5 that perhaps were not mentioned in the PTR? An auction host? Like, the only reason why increasing attack speed between 41 and 92% could make sense is if the gaps of decrease animation length with increased attack speed just get that big at that point, which is not what we see, so that doesn't make sense. And then the second part would be, between these numbers, the calculation is failing in some way, like the coding is failing in some way. Or all attack speed is not made equal in the coding, and minions are either like not inheriting it properly. Like this valley doesn't speak to the developers put in an arbitrary cap between a certain amount of attack speed. That doesn't make any sense. I do not know, Ava. Like, if the data is accurate, right? Because I can't even say the data is accurate. I believe that it is. From what I see from Khan, I think he does a pretty good job of trying to understand the game and trying to put out at least unbiased findings. And the only reason why there would ever be... The only reason why you would not continue to see increasing yet still linear decreases in total animation length, or faster attacks, which are saying the same thing. The only reason why that would exist right there is some failure of the game. Because there is no reason to have an arbitrary cap. Yeah. There's a link to my Google Sheet in that post. Oh, 6. Are you the first comment that says like my data supports your thing? Is that you? Yep. There is no logical explanation for nothing happens between 41 and 92. Like, that's not seen in any other animation length. It's not seen in any other system. The only things that can make sense are not all attack speeds are created equal. That region is where you start to get weird rounding errors, and what we see client side is not matching what you see server side. It speaks to an anomaly and not a logical like a logical conclusion. They must be trying to nerf Frenzy dead. There's no logical reason for you to come to that conclusion. Like, what would that statement even mean? You know, like, right? Because it's not like Frenzy Dead doesn't work. And they would just nerf it. Assuming secret caps is not the logical conclusion. Side note, the Infernos are pretty dope. Yo, Vanoy, I'm glad you're enjoying them. Might have messed up your pupillary distance, otherwise Game Advantage feel pretty solid. I would definitely hit them up to see if you can send it back in for a correction if you're not getting the exact experience that you're hoping out of it. Tried multiple gear aspect combinations, same result. The reproducibility of a thing does not allow you to draw a conclusion of something like this is meant to be like this, or even here is the causative agent. Yes, this was the post. Then there's the other part too, where there's actually two other things. And Ava, I'm near positive the answer is no. Ava, have you ever actually tested whether or not attack speed modifies missile velocity? It shouldn't, but that's only because we have no reason to believe that it should. That was something I was thinking about that I've never actually tested. I've also not observed it, but I also haven't looked for it in particular. And then you have one of the issues, which is we actually don't know the behavior of when a minion determines that it will have delay frames. And a data set would have to be like sufficiently large enough to average out the difference between the types of minion attack patterns that happen and when they do or do not make AI decisions to delay. And how often on average that occurs. And then whether or not the AI making the decision to delay acts as an interrupt to an animation, where this one's like really, really hard. This one's like impossible to control for on minions, but basically if you're holding down the spam button of a skill, let's say it takes 20 frames, a third of a second every time. If you hold down the spam button and then buffer input a different animation, so whether it's moving or whether or not it's casting a different skill, you will, like when you spam a skill, if you just cast the same skill multiple times in a row, that's actually not the fastest combination of animation lengths for inputs. So if you go attack, move, attack, while you will attack less times per second, the frames between when you attacked, when you stopped attacking, when you attacked again, are actually shorter than just spamming the skill. Now, why is that relevant? Because if the AI decision to delay acts as an interrupt, so I call this the interrupt flag, there's action flag, which is the point within an animation that the missile is created. There's the interrupt flag. The interrupt flag is the point into the animation where a buffered input can stop your current animation, begin a second animation. And then there's the repeat flag, which is if you're just spamming the same skill, when will you cast it again? And basically, if the minion making the AI decision to delay would count as an interrupt, while the minion attacking 1, 2, 3 would get more attacks per second, if it went attack, delay, attack, the amount of frames that first attack would take would actually be less frames than if it was spamming. Now, there's no way to control this, but it is something that probably should also be tested, because one of the problems is the data would need to be on the scale of thousands of attacks to actually average out these things if they all occur at a fairly regular pace. Like 100 attacks for this is almost statistically nothing. It's good to like get like a broad brushstroke understanding of roughly what's happening. And it's easy to then see the difference between like one attack speed number and the next one. But it doesn't actually give us insight into literally how fast is each minion's animation and whether or not they even have different breakpoints. Because, and I guess I can go into the game. And this is all amongst the many reasons why I have not sat down and tested minion attack speed to an exceptional degree, only to see whether or not attack speed was working, as opposed to trying to figure out the nitty-gritty. Because it's something that became apparent when I was initially testing minion attack speed at the beginning of the season. And it's really, really, really apparent with the Iron Golem. And just because it's less apparent with the other minions doesn't mean it isn't a huge contributing factor. So I'll try to show this. And it's again, it's one of the reasons why I actually really don't like measuring it based off of attack, a damage showing up on the screen, or Shadow Blight procs. Shadow Blight procs add another variable, which is how, like, quite literally when you see the damage number on the screen is not even representative of the frame that it occurs every time, because it slowly expands out. It is like very dull to much like brighter, and they have like varying velocities. But the let me try to give you an example here. So this minion, left hand, left hand, left hand, right hand, right hand, left hand, left hand, left hand, right hand, left hand, right hand, right hand, left hand. Okay, so we can see that the two different hands probably have very similar animations, but you would need to prove that. And then you have the delay. But the delay does not always happen after the same number of attacks. Also, okay, so this is also really hard to see. But on one of those attacks, after he did the right hand, the next right hand seemed to shoot out much faster. And that's because I think that the animation of the minion is racing to meet the server tick rate. So what we don't have is even a consistent definition of the animation frames for the minion's attack. And since there isn't a consistent decision to delay, so that was just 2 delays in a row. It was a delay, attack, delay. The animations swapping between the 2 animations have to have an inherent delay behind them. Just counting attacks per second isn't accurate enough. It's accurate enough to get a rough idea of when you're seeing significantly more attacks over a given time. But what it isn't actually giving us is the breakpoints per attack speed percentage value of even the different animations that the minion has. Now, you could argue that the left and the right hand are the same animation length, and they very well may be. To the very simple brain kind of look. See, that second attack was significantly faster, but that attack was also much faster. There was a delay decision there. The left and the right attack animations seem vaguely in tempo, or that they have the same rate, rather. But let's look at this. This is the Iron Golem. Left. Smash. Okay, hold on. Let me pick the... Don't do that. So, actually, if you make them do the shockwave, their attack becomes very consistent. They do a left hand and then a right hand, right? Although they had a delay there. But if I instead do this Iron Golem, the difference in attacks is insane. And once he respawns, we'll see him. Left, right, left, left, right. The difference in the attack speed and its consistency here versus something like a Blood Golem is like almost offensive in how slow the Iron Golem attacks. This is also with a very fast, well, a relatively fast weapon base. Not the fastest, obviously, but the second fastest. There's some problems with this, and you're correct on a lot of your choices. So the problem at the moment is that we have a single animation skills and double animation skills. Single animation skills will show animation breakpoints if your step is controlled. Issue with double animation skills is that they have half breakpoints, where it averages that one skill 1 frame shorter than the other, but it's not based on the animation. It is fully random. I think checking minimum frame among 100 attacks. Minimum frame. What do you mean by minimum frame? Counted minimum frames from 100 attacks. What does minimum frame? What does that mean? Frames between damage numbers. that really doesn't work. The one of the, like, just right off the bat, minimum frame until you see a damage number has a theoretic constant variable, which is velocity travel time. Which changes the impact of the attack speed on the, since the attack speed is only changing one of those things. It should be constant, but I quite literally don't know where the projectiles, I literally don't know where the projectile starts from on the right hand attack versus the left hand attack. Like, the first thing is, nobody has proven yet, as far as I know, whether or not the different animations impact anything. Kind of like first and foremost, right? The second issue is that in looking at attack speeds from different caps, we shouldn't assume that they are equivalent for these purposes, and that the minions are properly inheriting them. Like, I don't see control for all the variables. It does not mean that you're not seeing a phenomena. I'm not devaluing that. What I have yet to see is a proper control for all the variables, and people being willing to work off of assumptions, which I do not like. That is not how you do, that's not how you get to conclusive findings. That is how you replicate phenomena. Like, quite literally, if the right hand attack generates the missile from this part of the arm, like if the monster's hitbox, let's say the missile always generates from the furthest point towards the target of the monster's hitbox, let's just say that. We don't even know if your minion's hitbox changes based off of the attack animation that's using. And there's no reason to assume that it should or shouldn't. You just have to recognize that like might be a thing. As such, counting how many frames it takes for each one, and then the impact on it, would lead to an incorrect conclusion. And this is why I just haven't done it. Because I can't do it offline, and I can't believe the values that I get. Because I can't control for what animation my minion even does. Yeah. Loving Blight in Season 4, but I understand it's more or less dead next season. Any recommendations for an A tier plus dot base build? I do have to play Indara or Flaybarb. Nobody can realistically tell you that, Molly, because we have no idea what changes they're going to make based off of the feedback from the PTR. I can only tell you what will happen if they change nothing. I can't tell you what will happen when they inevitably change something. This doesn't mean that we can't unravel minion attack speed, but what I've never seen people tackle in a meaningful way is accounting for all these things or even recognizing them as realities. It's just, I put on attack speed, these are the numbers that I got, so let's draw conclusions. open the Google Sheet, maybe I can understand better. Unless your Google Sheet will touch on the things that I'm talking about, I don't believe that this will necessarily be a good use of my time. I also can't see it. Hello? Can I not just see all? This is funny. Oh, it is a reply to this one. Yeah, so I've looked at this. Yep. Yeah, I read through this today. So again, the phenomena that you're describing doesn't in any way, shape, or form address the things that I brought up. And this is not to be dismissive, but that is like demanding that the data be viewed in one way does not account for the things that I think that I brought up, which are legitimate concerns. Like the minimum frame length is always going to be the readjusting to like server rate minimum frame length, right? Which is like significantly shorter than what the true average frame rate should be for an attack. Like this is insane, right? So we can recognize that at least one of these data points has to be wrong, or is not properly representative of the like expected state of the coding and what you should get. And for like your median frame to be close to your average frame with a range of this, you need like 500 attacks for it to start to get like good. Like for it to like start to get good. Like it is impossible, as long as if everything is held constant, it is impossible that 2 attacks would be a half-second in difference. And this is, again, this is not shitting on your data. I believe you have this data. It's not even shitting on your methodology. It is calling into question a part of the methodology. Because if I got these 2 outcomes, I would give up on this methodology myself. Like if the minimum amount of frames it takes for the missile to apply damage to the target is 40 frames, so 2/3 of a second, and the maximum frames it ever took was 60 frames. Yeah, I'm not, hey guy, I understand. I'm not stupid. Like, I don't think you're trying to call me stupid, but like, yes, I understand the difference between these two things. The range is impossible, right? The range is impossible. There's no way that the same animation has this much of a discrepancy. That's the AI frame added. So then you were measuring frames from when you first see a damage number appear to when you see the next damage instance appear. Right. I don't think that is a particularly valuable way of attempting. Like that is one of the reasons why I didn't like the Shadowblight example. Because the Shadowblight example adds on another layer of variability of trying to sync up with like the server state. The only thing that we can get which is like approaching close is the beginning of an animation, and then when missile makes contact with target, and that's on a character being minimum distance to the target, and beginning is the closest that we can get to minimizing variability. And even this like does not actually negate it. Like even this does not actually get rid of it, but it's as close as we can get. It is quite literally the best that we can do. Because you can actually see when a skill has been activated, this grays out for a frame. And the best that you can do is determine when missile has struck, which we have to use the damage value to get to. But like the moment that I move out here, the relative strength on how much my attack speed has affected my animation length. It also includes the missile velocity and distance traveled. And then brings into question from where is the missile generated. Doing this minimum minimizes the impact of that on our findings. And even this is not accurate enough why you need to get like a couple hundred attacks to see the difference of like plus or minus like 3 or 4 frames. I think in most circumstances it should be closer to like 2 to 3 frames in difference. Which is mostly why I have trouble drawing conclusive statements. Like things that can be said. This phenomena happens. Okay, we can now identify that this phenomena happens. What could cause this phenomena? Is now like the next question. Because over a large enough data set with a minion attacking, I also don't even like multiple minions attacking, honestly. I really don't like using Shadowblight procs. Because I don't think that Shadowblight procs should be assumed to be more. I think that adding another thing the coding has to do only makes the data less reliable when you can just track minion attacks. You have to look at damage instances, sure, I think getting the minions next to the target helps to reduce some of that a little bit more, to see like a much more appropriate impact of attack speed on the point from minions begin attacking to damage instances seen. You stretch that out to about 1,000 attacks to hopefully account for like an averaging between left and right-handed animations, and then try to use that dataset to similarly graph out how often delay occurs. And then by getting like trying to approach like a constant that we can use as delay variable, then use that to clean up the data on a second set. And then we start to approach like closer to what the breakpoints look like. It's determining what causes this is like probably the biggest issue. There is no reason to believe that this occurs for some reason. Like there's no reason to believe that this is intentional. Weird part about left and right hand animation is that the game decides which hand is slower as the first attack happens and until attack chain ends. I don't necessarily understand what that statement means. I also wish I could see these data points a little bit more clearly. Like I can, obviously, but just a little bit hard. Yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying. When you have a multi-animation attack pattern. Although the thing that probably screws it up is that I assume delay interrupts chain. It doesn't. So here's my other question. What other skill has an innate delay? Like other than minions making an AI decision of delay? There's a delay? Like rather than make its next attack, the character delays for a small amount of time? We might be talking about two different things. I promise I was doing... I was looking at Paragon boards. I don't believe that we were discussing the same thing. Got you. Yeah, so we're talking about two different things, Ava. So this, not in the animation delays longer than you expect it to, based off of the average of the two animations in a multi-animation attack. Minions will go attack, attack, choose to do nothing, choose to attack, attack. Like, you will see the animation fully end, and then a new animation start, as opposed to the continuation of an animation, but with a longer total length than expected. So in Diablo 2, minions had an innate delay between AI decisions. It would go attack, do nothing for 15 frames, choose whether or not to engage monster or attack monster in front of you, or move. Because minions basically have like a couple AI decisions, right? If no target within threat aggro range, mill. If target within threat aggro range, move towards and then attack. If next to monster at current highest aggro, continue to attack. But it will stop for 15 frames. Minions, seemingly, randomly decide to delay for an amount of time before beginning a new animation, or before making a new decision. Now, what you could be arguing is that that delay is actually not a delay, but is instead a long enough difference in the total animation length that it looks like it has stopped animating. Like it has stopped that animation and started a new one. That is possible. But I'll try to like point to it. I'll try to point to it when it happens, I guess. So we see that it can choose to attack again immediately with the same hand without having to come back to a rest state. So it does pop, 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 pop. But there are points that the minion will come to a complete rest state as if the animation has stopped. I just wish it always did one attack so it would be easier to see whether or not it's just a discrepancy. So right there, it appeared to completely stop. There again, it seems as if it chose to completely stop. Now, is that actually just like an extension of the total animation? And we're looking at the frame where it swaps between hands? Maybe. It's hard to say. But it appears to have an AI decision of delay. This also might work differently when there's like an active monster that is also moving, because this delay might actually be like recalibrating where target is to be attacking. Like right there. That seemingly just choose to stop for an amount of frames, like 5 to 8, kind of hard to say, 3 to 7, 3 to 6. And the question would be then, if it's not choosing to swap from one attack animation to the next one, is that resetting it as well? It could be due to a lot of things. This is why the dataset would need to be sufficiently large enough to account for this noise. But yeah, what's interesting about the animation is that it very clearly has a protocol of it's not so much a protocol. Well, how would I even describe this? Because I'm not good at coding. The randomly sped up ones to meet the server, like to meet the server tick rate. The reason why it can even have a different length of animation is because it is moving at some conceivable animation length that exists at that attack speed. Like we should be able to replicate that shortened total animation at a certain attack speed as long as it's within the range of like value that we can add to our character. But when an attack needs to occur over a certain length of time, the game chooses which animations or which frames from the animation to remove to have it occur that fast. Have you counted watch to see if there's a pattern between pauses, like left hand, right hand? I have. There is no pattern. That is discernible. Watching it for long enough over the past year, I have not found a way to determine why the minion does what it does on any one of them. The worst part being that because the animation literally travels over a shorter distance, the left hand just looks like it attacks faster. It probably doesn't, but it looks like it does. Now, the issue being that we can't choose to have the minion be in null position, meaning like not making a decision and then making an attack. We can't control for that. So to be able to say it confidently, like what is the animation length for each one, is very hard. What we can say for certain is that we can't say most of it for certain. All we can really see is the effects on it on a large enough given data set. Where can you see this build planner? Where can you see me just having a skeleton out? This is not a build. What will happen to pre-owned uniques when season 5 hits? I plan to move over to Eternal Realm, trying to plan ahead. What will happen to pre-owned uniques? I'm not sure what that question means. You keep all of your gear. It goes into a stash that you can pull out of but can't add items into. So this is why I haven't sat down and done the data crunching. Because I actually can't come up with a sound enough way of doing it where I think that I'm accounting for all of the issues. Unique. So the dev said this time uniques will be fully upgraded, like fully updated. What up, you two? You two are Yukon? Might have Khan over on YouTube right now. Also, where music go? That's Khan. No, you're good, man. Welcome in. So what we're basically doing is absolutely tearing apart your findings in every meaningful way. No, that's not what we're doing at all. Basically, what I forget how we even got onto this. Oh, Ava was here, and I was wondering if Ava had seen this. And I also sent it off to C Todd. C Todd has come in and has left comments on it. I haven't seen, like, I've seen C Todd's data before, but I haven't gone back and looked at it. So we were talking about a couple different things. One, just like the realization that this phenomena occurs demands that there is a reason, and I believe that it points to a coding issue, and that there's no logical conclusion to come to that determines why this happens, because this doesn't happen anywhere else in the game. And we don't see this even on other, we don't see this on the other minions. So I think that this reality right here speaks to the equation failing at this point, like somehow hitting some type of like negative, and then like circling back to, I mean, it's just Diablo games suck is basically what the thing I'm mostly pointing to is. I think that this speaks to some kind of failure in the coding. And then mostly talking about how do you even come to conclusive data based off of the number of issues with minions. Because while we could argue, and I said this on the post too, I truly do not believe that using Shadowblight procs is like approaching like a strong enough, I don't think it's approaching the data from a strong enough position, because I think it adds variables that can be further influenced by things that are outside of the control of the minions or the attack speed stat. So there's like a couple different things. One, the only thing that we can realistically use is the damage. Accurate. How powerful the impact of the attack speed is on this is immediately different. Like, how do I describe this? Come over here. So attacking from here, the missile velocity should be constant. Is it constant? I don't know, but it should be constant. So what that means is that we should be able to believe the outcome from a test like this versus a test conducted like this. The issue being that how much the attack speed impacts like the total time to next attack is going to look weird, and it's going to look like less than, because you have this huge constant variable, which is the missile velocity. Attack speed shouldn't impact missile velocity. We have no reason to believe that it would. But then you ask the question, hey, why are you even worrying about these things that could be problems? Well, we see this in a data set, and there's no logical reason for this to happen. So all we can try to do is begin to eliminate potential things with potential impact on the value of the data, right? So then we get to this point. Now, one of the major issues is that we first need to prove that each animation has the same frame length. According to my testing now, attack speed does not impact projectile velocity, and it should not, and I would believe that. I don't think that you'd have to go extensive there, but that is something that needs to be ultimately proved, right? Because what's funny is attack speed doesn't impact missile velocity, except attack speed does directly impact how quickly damage is dealt to targets regardless of distance for something like Blood Surge. Right. So we should assume that Blood Surge does not fire missiles out to monsters within its vicinity. It should like check area and apply something to it. But we already know that different skills apply damage in different ways. This minion, like, hold on. This minion fires a missile at the target. Why do I believe that? Because the minion finishes its animation and then there is a pause before the missile hits the target. I see it, but what you see has nothing to do with what the game is actually doing, right? So we could probably do a very simple test just to even prove that this minion generates a missile, the missile then travels, it has a velocity, and then the missile must successfully strike the target. Have I ever seen one of these missiles miss? Or is this actually performing a hit check and this is just representative of that, where it has like a variable amount of time before the hit check is made? I don't know. You would just have to prove that. I believe it creates a missile that fires out of the target that has a velocity, but that's an assumption that I'm making. But again, why are we making any assumptions? Because our assumption would be that this doesn't happen. The next part about it is, to my knowledge, nobody has sat down and proved that these two animations are the same length on average, that the left-hand attack and the right-hand attack are the same. And we also haven't proven why a minion chooses to make the AI decision of delay. Then, an interesting thing to note is that in skills which have or skills that have more than one animation, so repeating animations, like this, you would expect both animations to have the same length. From testing that Ava has done and other people in GMS have done. The game will attempt to average out these two animations. There will be a variability in the animation, so like the left-hand swipe will be shorter or longer than the right-hand swipe. So, if that's true for this mage, we already have to account for, is there a way for us to prove which attack it started on and what the length of each attack was to determine like true average attack animations per cycle? The issue being that with our attacks that have two animations, it is constant because we don't have a delay. The second thing is, since the minion seemingly does have a delay, does that actually reset the cycle? So those things all need to be proven before we can even start talking about like how valuable it is that a data set is a certain number. That's why I was talking about when I first answered you this idea of reducing the noise in the data because of all of the variables which we cannot control. And a data set would have to be, with this number of variables, the data set has to start approaching like 1,000 attacks. I think like minimum. Before we start talking about getting a strong idea of what the minion's base animation is and then what the impact of the attack speed on it is. Then we have a couple other issues. We can't know at what time the animation starts. So we would have to be able to identify when the animation has caught up to the server and then start the count from the fresh server tick, which I don't think is something that we can accomplish. Or again, the dataset would then have to be like long enough where that doesn't matter too. Then we start to get a really good idea of how much attack speed is required for each breakpoint. Then we have to be able to prove that both attack cap 1 and attack cap 2 lead to these same outcomes. And that they act equally. That one's easier to test. But it also is like determined off of, we have determined what cap 1 and cap 2 are. And while we can have strong evidence of that, that doesn't make it right, but it probably should be considered to be right. And then none of that can really account for this. And this isn't seen in the attack patterns of other minions, is my understanding. So, we were just mostly talking about it. Like, this just looks wrong. Exactly. So, like, this looks incorrect. As in, it should not be doing this. And if this is reproducible, but only on mages, then it double speaks to something that might be wrong. Yeah. But, and again, and I hope that this came across in how I communicated on the Reddit post. I think this is incredibly fascinating. And while I don't necessarily agree with the exact methodology that you use to reach these conclusions, or at least to collect this data, I don't think that this data is bad. Like, I don't think that it is valueless. I don't think that your time was valueless. I think that this is very good to see. I guess I'm mostly just making excuses for why I stopped looking at it. Yeah. You can't see, minions don't have a constant data or a constant damage output, Adrian. They have a minimum, they have a 50% damage range just from your weapon. So you can't even really see how long it takes to kill the dummy. Genuine question. If you're all into data and min-maxing, why do you choose to main what is considered to be the least complex ARPG of the current popular ones? I don't agree with your statement. Just kind of as like a poll, I don't know that Diablo 4 is considered to be the least complex. But I don't really see how those two things are related to one another. I play video games that I like to play. I like to play Diablo 4. I generally like the feel of Diablo games. And complexity does not mean better. Fair enough, you like the game, that's a good answer. Well, I also like... I would like to give you an opportunity to question even the basis of the question, right? If you like data crunching, why are you not playing a game that is considered to be more complex? Does not allow for like more interesting opportunities for data crunching? And it doesn't allow for more interesting opportunities for min-maxing? And often finding ways of eking out a stronger outcome when you have less tools can speak to a greater mastery and a greater ability to understand things at a more deep level. But the premise of the question is kind of confusing to me. I think that, like, one of my major issues with what was the most recent one? What was the most recent one I played the most? Was Last Epoch? Last Epoch? Oh, yes. Okay. So Last Epoch. This skill tree. No, not this one. This is like your mastery or whatever. This skill tree is more complex than the Diablo 4 skill tree because you can make more decisions. I hate this. I hate this because I think this is like the least approachable and least user-friendly way of communicating the options that are available to you. Like, I do not like reading this thing and then reading every other node to see whether or not that node interacts with this thing before making my decision to put this point in. And I don't think that this level of complexity for complexity's sake has added to the enjoyment of the game. It has just made it more challenging to know whether or not the decision that you're making will have the impact that you want it to have. And then once you master it, so when you master anything, the entire illusion of it falls away. The illusion is there for people who have yet to master it for the purposes of eliciting a certain outcome from the player looking at it. So when people see this, they're meant to think, this is very complex. I have a lot of different options. I will need to really understand this to be able to make the best decision. That's what this is meant to instigate in the player coming into contact with it. And I hated this. I hated this to my very core. This was very cool. I like this one. This one, like, much more like a talent tree. I like the talent tree. Absolutely hated this. Hated this to the end of all days. So here, I don't think that complexity should be like divinely valued, and that I don't think that it means that the outcome is better just because it is complex. I think that this is complexity for complexity's sake. So I don't really personally attribute complexity to value of game and then use that as a determining factor to figure out how much complexity I could break down to determine when I would play something. But like, I don't play a lot of complex games, but then I play a lot of like severely complex games, right? Like making a decision one turn to another turn in Civilization is like, I think too complex, but I also play that game. Slay the Spire technically has like an infinite complexity. I like to play that game. But then like I also play EverQuest, which isn't particularly complex. It's really complex though, isn't it? I don't know. I think most things are actually very complex. Some things are just like harder to understand at the same rate. But I do think that Diablo 4 is, well, the Diablo games also, and like, here's the funny part. Or maybe this isn't funny, but maybe it's like generally lost to time. The intended game design of Diablo, the game as both like Diablo 1 and Diablo 2, and as like a model of the franchise, was that anyone should be able to pick up a controller and be playing the game within 5 minutes. That was the design intent for the Diablo series from the original Blizzard North. It was meant to be that way. And that is something that can be looked for in the games for a player to know, I will get this experience if I play these games. And when I do see a criticism of Diablo is a simple game, I would point to the number of careers of people now on the internet that are just breaking down the game so that people can understand it at a deeper level as like a pretty good data point. But it is like meant to be simple to pick up and play. And people seem to forget that that is like by intent. And one of the selling points of the game. Like, my buddy picks up the game and plays. He's like in pit tier 100 now. He's doing, you know, millions and millions of damage. He doesn't necessarily know why he's using Flay over Double Swing or whatever, but he knows that's better. So like most things, like easy to pick up, difficult to master is kind of the idea. Minimum points needed to max the glyph for willpower. It's just interesting. This is 21 for there's not a cheaper way to do it. 21 for, so yeah, 21 for 39. Just Carl, thank you for the follow. And Sarif and Pompey, thank you for the follows. Ever played Baldur's Gate 3? I have. Absolutely. What up, Amanita? Is it better to achieve the bonus skills on glyphs? Yes, in almost every circumstance. There are some exceptions, but there's never a point where you would put a glyph into a board and not hit its minimum requirement. That I can think of. Yeah. The additional bonus nowadays is by far the significantly stronger benefit from glyphs. At one point, the additive damage was relevant. So after blood begets blood, you would have bone graft. Bone graft. Rare node boosting is fairly relevant. On bad gear, rare node boosting is like pretty strong. Is it better than starter? Not for the necromancer. Oh, well, actually on bad gear, yeah. Maybe an 8. Res is harder to get than armor. Yeah. Okay. And then on good gear, rare node boosting becomes very irrelevant, but not dead. Magic node boosting. On bad gear, not really magic node booster. Well, you could, oh, you go with corporeal actually a lot. Maybe a 9 on good gear, like a 4. Okay. Minimum points needed to leave the board on a dex node. Oh, look at that. It's the exact same as Bloodbath. Isn't that weird? Isn't it weird? 21. Minimum points needed to activate the glyph. $14. Yes, there'll be circumstances where you have no other points to put into anywhere else. So you should basically attempt to gain the largest amount of additive bonus per your build. For sure. Diablo's like go, minute to learn, lifetime to master. Yeah. I think that Diablo 4 has a shorter tail of mastery on it. But it's only because it doesn't have as many things in it yet. Yo, have a good night, Yama. I'd like Dune, the board game. I like a lot of board games. I'm always tempted to do something stupid like this. That doesn't really do anything. This is 23 for 49. Wait, Bloodbath was different? Oh, right, because, yeah, it has this one spacer here. So weird. For an intelligence node, minimum required to leave. Is this the best way out? Does this accomplish anything? It doesn't. Yo, be good, Ava. And thanks. I do wish they create an auction house because D-Trade feels so sketch sometimes. Constantly scared I'm gonna get in trouble for trading when somebody uses trades for USD. Luckily you won't get in trouble for that as far as I know. But it does feel sketch. I would agree. Does the order Paragon board are added matter? Can we have two overall boards that look the same in the end, but order of attachment mattered? Yeah, of course. Your order of attachment determines how much the requirements are to hit the rare node bonuses. So here, this requires 220 willpower. Here, it requires 290 willpower. So you may add a board at the very end that you could hit the bonuses for if you hit earlier, which have the same amount of points to leave it as another board, but you didn't hit it, and the board that you hit earlier didn't matter to you. Yes, the when you add them absolutely matters. This looks very efficient. I don't think there's a more efficient way to get out of here. Yeah, okay. So 26. This is 18. Can you get it cheaper than that? 5. Oop. Oop. So there, we're already 1 less efficient. 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom, we've hit 1. Same amount of inefficient. Now less efficient. Less efficient. More less efficient. Okay. Well, actually, hold on. Well, let's think about this. This is 19 points, but no. Okay. And then intelligence needed to max out the glyph. Trading on console must be horrendous. Excuse me. This is 28 for 70. Now hold on though, as I sit here recognizing something.
So, you subscribe to a bad content creator.
So this was
You're a real one.
25. This is 25 points. Yeah, why did I pick up this random dex node? Zoso, thank you so much for the 10 months. Can you see Grandfather in the Shadow Minion build? I can't. It's just not as good. It says multiply your damage by 2 and some additive damage and some maximum life. Whereas you could have a two-handed scythe with higher base damage than a two-handed sword with a comparable amount of maximum life, with intelligence as opposed to all stat, with a stronger additive damage, and then with even more stronger additive damage, and minimum a 2x multi. Right now, a 3.4 multi. Heard from Chronix that the best place to try reporting even major bugs is just the D4 forums, but even those might not get addressed in time for major patches. For the average player, yes, that is your best place. There's nowhere else for you to report bugs. There isn't like a better avenue. 25. Minimum points needed to activate the glyph. This was 17? 17. I don't know why I did that bad. I knew something seemed wrong. Isn't feedback option under bug menu an option as well? Isn't feedback option under report bug menu? Well, there is no official Diablo Discord. They will check the subreddit for sure, but not as much as the forums. Like, the forums are Blizzard's. Everything else is like a thing. Like, is some third-party thing. Also, I would not expect to see like some developer showing up on the forum post and going, hello, I have logged this bug, thank you, kind of deal. But that's not an indicator of whether or not they are looking at stuff. Yeah, that's what I was going to check. I believe that's only PTR. Is when that is extant. Bone graft. For Wildbauer. Wowie. 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 So it's this. It's 15 both ways. 2. $14, $15 versus 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 15 both ways. Okay. Wowie. So this is 26 points for minimum. Minimum needed to activate. Is 17. Isn't that interesting? Like, it's so bad as a wisdom glyph, but it is a comparable intelligence glyph as it is a wisdom glyph for the purposes of just activating a glyph. But it's significantly worse if you want to path through it. So like this is the thing. This is the magic. Although it's not a good end glyph at all, it might be your best willpower glyph. Although it's not, because Bone Graft exists, and so doesn't Blood Beget Blood. But you know what I mean? What if you need to use those for something else? What if you need to use this as your dex glyph? And you have to use this one as your fucking, I don't know, intelligence glyph. You wouldn't, but you get what I'm saying. And then it's only 20. 20 for 34. But like, look at that. Like, the only thing that's currently as valuable for the number of points for maxing out a wisdom glyph is Blood Begets Blood for dex. So if hitting the maximum on this was valuable for you, for a minimum, like, if you're like, I want to be able to get, like, let's say there was a glyph, and like, this is a bad example, but like, let's say you could put it into a board where you could get 39, but that would take 21 points. Bloodbath, right? This exact example. And you wouldn't be able to do that anyway. Then Bone Graft is just as valuable to you on blood as Bloodbath is for accomplishing this thing. Meaning that if your setup only had 20 points to spare, these two are actually comparable. Apparently there is like this, like that weird phenomena for mages also on Iron Golem, which is interesting. But not on warriors. I feel like the guides that you make should be accessible from the Blizzard launcher as a sort of D4 Academy. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you to say. It's very, very kind of you to say. All right, so that's Bone Graft. Now, as fun as the minion rant was, And the minion rant was very fun to kind of like sit down and think about. Sorry, I got a bunch of messages. It did eat into staring at these numbers and making them work. But that is okay. Cult Leader. Cult Leader is a cool board. Well, cool board is an interesting way of describing it, I would say. Boosting rare nodes, kind of the whole time, just kind of like 10 out of 10, right? Even boosting magic nodes, it's like pretty good. Because it says DR. DR is good. Yeah. Okay. Strength. We don't have strength glyphs. Blizzard should hire me. I appreciate that. So I mean, we could talk about a couple different things. One, the work that a lot of the Diablo partners do goes directly into the devs being able to make more informed decisions and being able to address issues that are found in the game. So like my video on Thorns doesn't trigger Hued Flesh, and it does trigger Decrepify, so it should trigger Hued Flesh, is the reason why Thorns no longer triggers Decrepify. It's one for one. I reported this, they fixed it next patch. It was never meant to be triggering Abhorrent Decrepify. Now, sadly, that made us weaker. I don't feel like we were properly compensated for it. But I'm just one of the people who are submitting feedback and bugs to the devs on a daily basis. You know, there is so much that goes into... I would say that the developers bring in a lot of people on a lot of things for feedback. And I think that it has positively impacted the game in very discernible ways. The issue being that due to the statuses of like NDAs and how things are handled, not every single thing can be quoted, right? The other thing is that there's more than just me, and there's more than just like max roll, right? Let's say Blizzard says, we're going to put max roll guides up on the launcher. There are tons of websites, so it can't just be max roll guides are up there. That would be incredibly unfair to the majority of other sites that also put in a ton of work, and a lot of great creators on those sites as well. And a lot of great build writers. But there's also like, they do give us opportunities for direct input, right? Like this. So this is the Blizzard YouTube page, or the Diablo YouTube page, right? They have 409 videos up. One of those videos I made. I made this video. Here in Season 3 of The Construct, we have The Gauntlet, a fast-paced strategic dungeon challenge. Now, they prettied it up significantly. Shoutouts to them and the amazing job they did with that. But like, leaderboards, ranking across all game modes, they do bring in knowledgeable people to help with making stuff. So they kind of do that. Is mainly the point I was making. Also flexing a little bit because like I made one of the official Diablo YouTube videos, and that's just like probably one of the coolest and most nerve-wracking things I've ever done. So for a Dex board, this is the fastest way out, right? Yes. So that's 21. Minimum points needed to activate the glyph. Uh, 14. No. I mean, that is the other thing too. Like outside of what I can and cannot say, like again, like based off an NDA or a contract, me being able to work from here means that you at least can have a certain level of certainty that I have my best interests in mind, and that ultimately what I'm trying to do is support my lifestyle through what I do and what I'm passionate about. That becomes very differently when you work for somebody, for sure. You can see our cynicism with overall receptivity, right? I think that if you're forcing me to answer the question through the lens of the way that I have structured this, you can understand why I've come to this conclusion. The answer will obviously be yes, because I don't believe that I agree with the lens that you're looking through this, and it's only because I think that we're coming at this from different positions. Me attempting to say that I have a full working knowledge of every reason why they should want to do a thing would be the peak of hubris. But what I think is that, and this is not to put you down, I think you have chosen a narrative and are fitting details to it for the purposes of reinforcing your bias. And if you were to take one step back and stop attributing like intent to every single thing, and instead attempt to understand why the decision could be made, it might help to alleviate some of the strength of the data points you're pointing to. Where I disagree wholeheartedly. The developers 100% sat down and had an entire live stream where they explained the change to damage buckets. And while their math was not completely accurate, they very clearly, the person who put together this slide did not do the equation properly. they fully explained to us how damage buckets now worked, and any confusion is due to people either having not watched it or not understanding it or continuing to perpetuate things that they believe which are untrue. The developers had a whole live stream where they broke down exactly what changed with damage buckets, and it was accurate. They do not want this stuff to have to be taught to them through Reddit when it is something as foundational as that. Like, they have fully come out and explained how the resistances were changed. They've come out and fully explained how the armor was changed. They've come out and fully explained how the damage reduction has changed. They fully came out and explained how scaling with monster level and item dropping and all that was changed and how it works now. Like, they have actually put out a ton of information about how it works. People just don't watch it, and then people perpetuate misinformation because they believe it to be true. So yeah. So like that last statement is just like wrong, and maybe use that as a means of reflecting back on the previous statements. Because like you can see how it's like they don't want us to know anything. They just want us to be able to figure it out ourselves. And also, they are a developer of a game, and there is a value in the community unlocking and discovering the truths of a game. I wish that some things were more intuitive and more obvious. Absolutely. But saying that like people don't want to be able to discover things about a game is like just misrepresentative of a very large desirable outcome in the video game industry. Like, there are whole genres whose entire purpose is that you are just supposed to discover it yourself and you're not supposed to go look up things. Does that mean that the game could be better at communicating stuff? Absolutely. But the premise that nobody wants to discover stuff, and as such, management must have an ego behind their unwillingness to take feedback and change that. Like, the structure of the outlook is based on a bunch of presuppositions that like you're choosing and then holding other people responsible for. Like, yeah. But only a Redditor level of involved player would sit down for a full live stream. The population of people who watch the live streams is larger than the Reddit population, so that's just wrong. And also, like, I hope you're not seeing this as an attack. I hope that you're like hearing it as I'm trying to give you an alternative outlook because people do not share your opinion, and maybe that can help you to better hone your opinion. Thorn's proccing huge flesh was broken since the pre-betas. Or Thorn's proccing Decrepify. Minions proccing Decrepify has been a bug since the pre-betas. It hasn't been fixed yet because things get prioritized. And like, they're working on stuff. Us considering something to be a priority does not make it a priority. If that was the case, think of how impossible it would be to prioritize things. Like, I think it might be approaching it from a very myopic view and like choosing to ignore the auxiliary points because we've kind of moved the goalposts like 3 or 4 times now. So I hope you can just kind of see that happening. as always, like, do not immediately attribute things to to maliciousness. It can just be that, like, we don't have the whole picture. Like, items proccing effects on skills proccing lucky hit chance is a bug. Just straight up a bug. Like, Deathless Visage's explosions are not meant to proc lucky hit chance, but they do. That is a bug that needs to get fixed. Now, if they fix that bug, it'll just take away power, and ultimately it's not like a game-breaking thing, so it's a very low priority, because players will just be upset that they've lost a thing. So it also goes into, okay, we've identified these bugs. Are they game-breaking? No. Do we have something to compensate them with? Not right now. It doesn't really fit into the scheme. Okay, let's not change it. Like, we don't have a total list of the things that they are saying we are not currently prioritizing, etc. You know, like, it's just more complex. It's just more complex. That's what it comes down to. Minimum points needed to max the glyph. That feels really bad. Honors do. Hey, Jep, I'm glad that you're enjoying it. Bone Spirit is a lot of fun. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's also, yeah, there's a little bit of, and I'm not going to make it a generational thing, right? It's kind of impossible for it to be a generational thing, like, from my standpoint. Like, were there games that were older than me when I came out? Absolutely, no question, right? I was born in 1990. But I've been playing video games since I had the cognitive function to do so, and I started with Sega and Nintendo. So while there were plenty of games before that, including arcade, and then Atari and Television, ColecoVision, the Commodore fucking computer and all that. Been around for like the majority of the major development of video games throughout history. What I find very interesting is how we ignore, I don't know, bugs in old games seem to be okay and didn't matter. Bugs now are like, do the developers even know what they're doing? No one's ever played a video game ever that didn't have multiple completely structurally damning game-breaking bugs in them. You've never played one.